Good morning and welcome to the conversation I'm having today with clinical psychologist Anton Böhmer. Now, Anton, when one speaks about dementia, probably one of the most difficult decisions families have to make is, when do I take my loved one to a care facility?
It's always a very challenging decision, Lisa, even under the best circumstances. Even if someone does not have dementia, it's a decision-making process that takes place because someone leaves behind a home. They leave behind a lifetime of memories. The place maybe even where they raised their kids and where they had family close by or neighbors and friends. And it's a big loss for everyone involved. Now, that process is even more complicated when someone does not have the ability to make that decision themselves. And that is what we often see with dementia. A person is obviously unable to realize that their current situation is not suitable anymore for them. And it's important to understand what dementia is, and therefore making a decision to take them to a dementia care home and not just a retirement home or a lifestyle village. Dementia is this very difficult process where someone loses certain abilities. We see changes in their quality of concentration and memory, changes in their ability to express their thoughts, that they can't do things in the way they've done before, and also that their ability to plan ahead and to execute those plans, it becomes more challenging. And therefore, their whole world that they've organized before is actually becoming more of a threat to them because they don't have the same control over that. And the very important additional aspect is that they may, in most cases, have a loss of insight. So they themselves are not aware that these difficulties are so much that they are not necessarily doing things that they've done before, and it may not be safe for them to remain in their home where they've always been.
Can you imagine for families, when the diagnosis usually are made, people are still more lucid and they can still do more. And then a lot of families think that they will be able to take care of their loved one till the last day, which is a lovely thought, but it's not always possible. Can we maybe talk about where does that line come in, where you have to realize, as much as you want to and as much as you love this person, it is not the best option always for you to be the caretaker?
When that diagnosis is made in the first place, it's a big shock and it's a big adjustment for everyone involved because often the difficulties are so gradual that it's very difficult to pinpoint where they started. And if that person, that loved one, lives with a husband or wife that are able to take care of them, then things may resume, quite normally. Okay, it goes without any big hiccups or challenges. And even when things may change and say that mother, that you decided you're going to look after her and that she moves in with you and you are there full time, that process may also still work out really fine. And the person may feel safe. They may feel that they are receiving the adequate care, that they are, they have good quality of life. But we know that dementia is a progressive illness. It doesn't stay the same. And over time, certain things become more difficult as, unfortunately, there's more atrophy in the brain. And these neurological changes do come out in someone's behavior and their ability to do things, like not only how they did it before, but also how they would like to do it. And that can cause a lot of frustration for this person. It can also create much more concern for the loved one because you can see that they are not safe in the way they do things. For example, leaving the kettle on, forgetting to take medication, going out at nighttime, not realizing it may be the early hours of the morning. And all of these changes are then warning signs that things are changing and the person is not necessarily able to manage a lifestyle in the same way they've done before. And we need to be very careful not to miss those warning signs because it's not only putting the person at risk, but you as a carer may experience much more anxiety about the well-being of that person. And these types of changes inform our decisions about the future.
I'm thinking now, what would be the difference between a dementia care facility compared to any other old age facility or a frail care facility? What do people with a dementia diagnosis get out of it? What is so special about it?
So, any care facility that you would like to go one day, once you've retired and once you decide to scale down, that you may need a smaller place, or it would be really nice for other people to make your food every day and they will organize outings and so forth. It's always important to find the right place. But what makes a dementia care home different is that they obviously need to be aware of the specific challenges that every specific person may experience in their lives, because people with dementia are not all the same. It may be the same diagnosis, be it Alzheimer's dementia or vascular dementia or Lewy body dementia, but people are still coming with their own personalities, their own history, their own traits. And someone with a dementia enters a facility with all of this, and the carers and medical professions and the management involved in a dementia care home obviously need more specific training to deal with that. And if you go to most care homes, they will provide wonderful and quality services, but they don't necessarily have the training to deal with someone with an impaired memory, or someone who may have hallucinations or difficulties to express themselves.
Yeah.
And we must also remember that unfortunately, one of the things with dementia, people lose the ability to do practical things. And it may be basic things that we don't even think about, like how to dress themselves, how to find their toothbrush and brush their teeth, how to orientate themselves, and they can get lost. So there needs to be much more supervision for that person. And for some people, almost on a 24-hour basis, because some people do switch their night and day times around, and then they get confused during the night because they don't know where everyone else is, and during the day they may be sleeping. But it's so different for different people. And I think it's so important, therefore, to go to a dementia care home and to look at the facilities and ask the right questions when you make a decision like that. Because such a person with a diagnosis will not necessarily, one, receive the care they need at a regular retirement village, but also at the same time, they may not be aware of the risks that may come along with someone with a specific type of dementia.
Anton, one of the reasons why it's so difficult to make this decision is for loved ones, the guilt that they experience to hand over someone to someone else. It feels like they are a failure, that they cannot take care of their loved one.
Yes, yes.
What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's difficult to not say what I'm going to say now. They can't. They can't always look after someone that they love very, very dearly. And they might have done it for quite a number of years as well, successfully. And we must absolutely applaud their input, the support, the love they've given to that person for maybe quite a number of years. If that person lives with them or nearby, it doesn't matter. But they've done their part. But we do reach a tipping point when the challenges become too much. When you as carer are getting burnt out in your attempt to be full-time, supportive daughter or son looking after someone, and you are more aware of the risks that are piling up. You are much more aware that your mother or even grandmother may become so isolated and lonely, and that you can't necessarily give something for her that addresses that social isolation. And it's in those cases that we need to appreciate there's a lot of practical and emotional implications when we make this decision. And a lot of people, and I work with dementia a lot of people say to me, did I do the right thing? They question themselves. Will dad be happy in this new setup? Um, will they really be cared for? And I think to address the guilt feelings is not necessarily only what you do after you've made the decision like this, but it's everything that you do beforehand as well to choose the right place where they will receive the best quality uh, care. And I want to say personalized care as well. That's very much aimed on them as person.
And I think what also plays a role is how supportive a facility will be for the family within the
Yes,
situation. That is something to keep in mind as well, to be able
absolutely.
to freely ask questions and to freely express what your concerns are.
Mm. I mean, if you um, decide on anything major, if it is to buy a house, if it is to buy a car, you get someone that can provide a wonderful sales pitch, and they will tell you this is the best option available. And we have all these happy people, and so many people drive this car without any problems. I think for a decision like this, it's important then to ask those questions and to say, but um, can you tell us how many carers are there with dementia training? How many carers will be available for my father? Can we speak to other family members of people who actually live in this care home? To ensure that even if something looks really good on a pamphlet or the information that you receive from a dementia care home sounds fantastic, that you actually go and see how it looks like. And to take the person of dementia along to say, we need to involve you in this decision making as well, because this is a decision that actually involves all of us. And I think it's important for guilt feelings afterwards to say, we did take that to go and have a look at this place. He did see how his room would look like. And involving that person in that process, it can be challenging as well, because they might not want to leave the back room where they lived with you, or maybe their own home. But it is a process, and it comes with several challenges as well. So I think in terms of feeling guilty afterwards, it's an emotional consequence of making such a drastic decision for someone else. But it doesn't mean that you are guilty of something, because you are taking a well informed decision for the long term care of someone that you love.
Because you keep on saying it's a process, I would imagine that don't wait till it's too late. Should be a slogan.
Mm,
You must start the moment you hear the diagnosis to start planning, not necessarily just so that it
no,
doesn't catch up to you somewhere.
yes, because unfortunately, what we also see is often this decision is taken in a time of crisis, when the wheels come off. Often, when someone is admitted to a hospital when they lived in their own home, but they might have been undernourished, or they might not have taken their medication correctly, or they may experience a psychosis. They may have visual hallucinations. And in that crisis, it's much more difficult to now suddenly get all the information and try to find out which dementia care home will be the best suited, most affordable, where there's the best ratio carers, medical professions, maybe occupational therapists to people living there. And the planning part, is like you said, starting when you get the diagnosis. And sometimes at the point of the diagnosis, the dementia can already be quite severe, because we don't always either have awareness of the changes, or we may not live close to that family member. And then, we need to act much quicker. We need to decide, okay, let's go and talk to the right people. Let's get input from maybe social workers and so forth. Let's look at our budget, and we will have to work quickly. But in most cases, people come to me and they will say, I have some memory problems. My family is concerned about it. And then you do start a conversation. I do an assessment, and I discuss my findings with not only the person, but most often with the spouse or with children as well. And it is to say we can't say exactly how things may change over time, but when we reach certain points, come back and speak to me. Go and speak to your psychiatrist or your neurologist, and we need to make sure that we address changes when it happens. No one can predict the future, even with dementia. It's easy looking back and to say we can see these changes, and therefore In retrospect, we might have decided things differently. But that is a very common thing people say. We don't have that ability to use our hindsight and to predict the future. And it's important to say rather that when you see certain red flags appearing, difficulties becoming more challenging, when this person is becoming much more isolated or their loss of quality of life is much more profound, then we need to say, okay, let's look at the plans that we've set in place already. And now we need to start executing those
So it
plans.
sounds to me, Anton, to summarize today's conversation, that it comes down to when a diagnosis is made, that you must start learning because you need the knowledge of the specific dementia diagnosis, and then to start making the plans. It doesn't mean that it's going to necessarily happen, but to have all your tools ready for whatever happens.
Indeed. And it's a journey that you don't have to walk alone as well. There are a number of different professionals and organizations that can provide information as you go on as well. It's also something to consider that you yourself may struggle with this emotional burden of having to make decisions for someone who doesn't have the insight or the capacity to make those decisions. And it may be really helpful for you to go and speak to someone about what you are going through as a child or as a brother or a spouse, because it's a challenging process. And again, there's a lot of practical things to consider in terms of what you take with for that person's new residence that may make them feel comfortable and safe, but then also in terms of looking after yourself in this process, where you are actually carrying quite a big emotional burden on your own shoulders.